The ocean is a noisy place. And it's not just the waves that are rolling stones, sand, and seashells around the ocean floor, although that can be deafening. The life that fills the ocean makes a vast array of sound. We all know your classic dolphins and whales, but there's also things like parrotfish chomping on coral, the drumming of a large territorial grouper, or even the various chirps, clicks, and hums of bony fish like the notoriously loud plainfish midshipman that's found off of California. But sharks, the ocean's most iconic predator, are absolutely silent. In fact, this week's guest told me that they are one of the few vertebrates in the ocean with no known sound-producing organs. They have no way to make sound whatsoever. And he should know. Tom, the Blowfish Herd, is no stranger to loud sounds. He is the world's only heavy metal marine biologist, and as it turns out, being a heavy metal musician is an advantageous trait for a shark researcher. Like flies to honey, playing heavy metal music underwater is a surefire way to bring sharks into your study site, which would be completely ridiculous if it wasn't absolutely successful. In this week's interview, Tom explains how this works, the wild world of underwater sounds, and his unique role as a science translator that's saving sharks one heavy metal guitar riff at a time.
Welcome to Conservation Connection, the show where we do exactly what it sounds like, introduce you each week to the amazing people working in the field of conservation. I'm Sarah Catherine.
And I'm Chance.
And this is the show.
Unfortunately, this is the final episode of Season 10. It has been such a great season. We've seen some amazing response from you guys, and honestly, just some really fun stories.
We're really excited to be wrapping up on this specific episode. We think you'll have tons of laughs just like we did, which we will talk about more shortly.
I love basically every guest that's ever been on the show, but Tom, the Blowfish Herd, is probably the funniest person we've had on in the last 2 years.
Definitely within the last 2 years, maybe even since we started the podcast in 2019, in all honesty.
Yeah, he's just this big, boisterous guy from the UK. He's brilliant when it comes to marine biology, and he's just really fun to listen to.
This was another episode that we had the opportunity to record at EarthX in Dallas this past April.
EarthX is an amazing conference. It happens in Dallas every year during Earth Day. It brings together people from all sides of the aisle to talk about solutions for a greener future. If you have the opportunity to attend, I highly recommend it. We've worked with them since 2019, and we just always get some incredible content from the EarthX conference.
This year, during one of the EarthX after parties, we actually got to see Tom playing guitar with the band, and it was just a really cool experience. Speaking of that, now is a really great time to mention, once again, if you listened to our last episode, you heard me say this in our outro, but Tom the Blowfish Herd is the world's only heavy metal marine biologist. Now you say, that's weird, you would think a lot of people are studying heavy metal in the marine biology field. Not that kind of heavy metal.
We're not talking about mercury and lead here. I'm talking about a dude with a pointy guitar playing chugga-chugga rhythms for science.
I actually had to explain to Chance what I was talking about when we were researching who we were going to interview at EarthX. I was like, oh, this is really cool. There's this heavy metal marine biologist. He says he's the world's only heavy metal marine biologist, and he has a show with EarthX TV. Like, we should get him on the show.
And I was like, what? I mean, how is that his brand that he studies like mercury in the ocean? That's cool and an important thing to study, but like, that's not a big branding thing. And then she shows me this picture of what is effectively a Viking.
Yeah, pretty much.
Playing guitar, and I was like, yes, we need him on the show.
Yeah, so definitely when you get the chance, go check out the Ocean Wonders trailer and his website and see what he's all about, because it's pretty ridiculous.
I mean, if you like learning about the ocean and laughing at the same time, this is the guy for you.
Another really fun part about this episode was that Chance and Tom...
Well, his friends want you to call him Fish.
Yeah. So Chance and Fish had so many similarities, and they both took drama classes, they both studied marine biology, they both have worked with sharks, so I thought now would be a great time to ask you about your experience researching sharks.
Yeah, so I went to a high school where our unofficial tagline was science fair is our football. We were tiny. We did not have a big athletics program, but we were really, really good at science fair. So Luckily, I had some really supportive teachers because I wanted to study sharks, which is a little hard to do in South Texas. But I was able to work with SeaWorld San Antonio. They had been mentoring me from the time I was very young in their education department, and they opened up the doors for me to do some research on how sharks responded to magnets. Because if you don't know, sharks are able to sense electromagnetic fields just like you and I can sense visual light. They feel the magnetic fields with little pores on their face called ampullae of Lorenzini. So basically my idea was, can we take a strong magnet and embed it into stuff like swimsuits or surfboards and use that to repel sharks?
You've probably seen a ton of this research over the years. I know even when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, they're researching how to repel sharks. I still don't think we're quite there.
Well, the electromagnets work really well because it's like it comes on at surprising. It's like a sudden noise. Mm-hmm. But the magnets that are rare earth magnets that are just kind of always on, like the one you would find in an old hard drive, they get pretty acclimated to those pretty quickly. So there's still a lot of work being done on like, how do we make it an effective repellent?
Right. So did your experiment work?
Sort of. As is often the case with science, my early trials showed that they didn't like to hang out by the magnets, but when I moved to a different species of shark, they liked to chew on them, which is not really what you want to make board shorts and surfboards out of. So maybe.
Yeah.
It warrants further study.
Definitely, which brings us back to the show really nicely because Fish actually mentions some of the other research being done with sound and sharks and how to attract them and potentially repel them.
Yeah, if you just want to listen to a dude talk about sharks really passionately and science communication for a while, you've found the right podcast. Before we get into this week's interview, I just wanted to mention again that we have our Conservation Connection hotline set up. That phone number is 706-505-0582. Shoot us a text message. We would love to hear your thoughts about the show. We text you back, and it's not like an auto response. It's me. I'm typing into the phone. It's a lot of fun. But if you send us proof that you've reviewed the show or shared it with a friend, we're happy to send you a sticker pack. So with that, let's get into this week's interview. Fish is a complete goofball. He's a great time.
And you will actually get to hear him introducing our show for us. So enjoy that.
It's the first time that has ever happened in the history of Conservation Connection, because he's just so funny.
So don't be too surprised.
Enjoy this episode of Conservation Connection with Tom the Blowfish Herd. All right. Do you want me to lead in or do you want it?
I'll start.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. Let's do it.
That would be amazing.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tom the Blowfish Herd here. We've got some quiet conservation coming in from today. We're going to listen to some sloths and skip round for some naked mole rats. But until then, here's the latest tunes from the Armadillos. And then you come in with a fader. Digging for grubs.
I get why you have your own show.
Yeah, well, less on that. Right.
All right, we'll hit it. Today, we are here with Tom Herd, the Blowfish, the world's only heavy metal marine biologist.
That's the one.
We are so excited that we got to grab this interview with you while we're here at EarthX 2024. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for having me. And please, call me Fish.
Fish.
Oh, you fish. Cool.
It's like, if you're calling me Tom, then it's like the tax man calls me Tom.
Yeah.
You know, you just call me Fish.
I wasn't sure if it was Sir Blowfish, Duke Blowfish.
A very, very old friend of mine said that people that call me Fish are my friends. People who call me the Fish are people who know me, but people that refer to me as the Blowfish are people that fear me.
There you go.
So I don't know if it's true, but you can just call me Fish. You call me whatever you like, really. As long as I turn and look at you, you know I'm listening. So
See, that's
Then
what
we're
I
good.
say. I've got a fair number of names. I mean, Chance is what I go by. It's not my legal name. My legal name is Brooks, but I've been Chance forever. And
Oh, now everyone knows.
well, that's fine.
Oof.
It's not a stage name. I've had it since I was 5, but I'll answer to just about anything. Call a loud sound at me, and I'm going to look.
That's something I'm going to test. I'll wait until I'll see you walking in the street.
Yeah.
I'll just yell something like "traffic cone," and you'll be like, "What?"
And
Like
it will work, I
like
promise
a
you.
meerkat responding to an eagle. Like, oh.
Predator, where?
Yeah.
Well, plus here you have a bit of a different accent, so I think he would definitely turn and look.
That's true.
I'm clocked in on that.
With that in mind, what would be the best accent for your show? Do you want me to be regional? Do you want me to be perfectly British? Do you want me to be what do you want me to be?
I think your true identity, your true accent is what's good for today. So we can stick with
Well,
that.
that'll be my Yorkshire one. That'll be this lass. I don't know if you lot will be able to understand when I'm going on like when I'm like this, but that'll be Yorkshire. Oh, we'll do it in Yorkshire, man. I don't mind. Now then, we get to the bottom of this, mind. Well, right, no. That is my real accent, though. It's my Yorkshire accent is where I'm from. So
Gotcha. Well, we haven't heard you talk like that at all until now. So
No.
how we've heard you talking is perfect.
Okay, so the fake accent got
There
you.
you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
The show accent.
Yeah.
Because you're the host of Ocean Wonders, which is on EarthX TV. How long have you been in sort of the science communication?
So I have been doing science communication since before it was called science communication. And that isn't some kind of brag, but it's more of a highlight of how that now it is a recognized pathway. It's a recognized thing. So, when I first started long years ago, when I was wearing short shorts, pretty much the same as these, it was just passionate people talking. So I was 16, working in a public aquarium and, giving tours and talks. And, that's what it was. You weren't anything. You were just someone who was passionate about what was going on. And then, as I sort of moved through my career, I've done a load of public speaking in schools and at public events, conservation events, that kind of thing. And it was sort of during that time that suddenly this science communications kind of solidified itself. And now, we are science communicators. So, I've been doing it for one way or another, that side of things, for a very long time. I always said that, come hell or high water, I would be the guy standing in the street with, the big sandwich board sign on saying, I love sharks, like stopping people like, do you want to know about sharks? Stand here for 10 minutes, I'll tell you about sharks.
You don't have anywhere to be, right? Let's just sit and talk about this.
Well, I mean, you get hammered, don't you? It's like people come up to you and say, hi, can I talk to you about... No, but can I talk to you about sharks?
There you go. You got to turn it around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we do turn it around. But as far as... So I still do that side of science communication. I still do that, the public outreach, as it were. Certainly in the past couple of years, obviously COVID, and, I don't know how you guys work over here, but certainly as well in the UK, going into schools is now a lot harder as well, just, for pupil safety, which is great. It's fine. I mean, I'm all checked and that kind of stuff, but it used to be the kind of thing where you'd pop up to a random school, you'd knock on the door and you'd be like, oh, I'm here to do a talk. And they'd be like, what? Yeah, crack on. Anything to keep the kids entertained for 30 minutes.
That's so funny
Yes.
because as you were talking, I actually had a very similar experience. I've been talking to people about the environment since I was 5 years old. It was the first time I stepped on stage. All through like elementary, middle, and high school, I went to schools in San Antonio with like my pet snakes and like, I had a Eurymastix, I had tarantulas, I had rats, I had like all these awesome things, and would just go into classrooms and be like, hey, I care, you should care. Like, let me just share this passion with you. And I kind of evolved that into what we do now, which is almost exclusively science communication. It's like working with scientists to make your work publicly accessible so that people care and understand it and like feel connected to the work that you're doing. So I totally have that like mirrored experience of seeing science communication become this like really well-defined pathway, career path. That was not the case when I started doing it at all. And now it's really cool to see it as kind of a more accepted field.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I was at school, I loved my biology, obviously, and loved all my critters and stuff then. But also I did a lot of acting, and I came to like the point where we were finishing off our A-levels, and I'm not 100% sure what the conversion is. I'll let you convert in post.
There you
can
go.
Put a little soundbite in post, snip.
And so here we are. A-levels in the UK are similar to AP credits in the US system, a high school level class that sometimes counts towards the requirements for your undergraduate degree. Back to you, Tom.
But my drama teacher at the time said, right, okay, we're going to get you ready for RADA, which is obviously a really big drama school in the UK. He said, we're going to get you ready for RADA, get you sorted on it. I said, actually, no, mate, I'm going to do marine biology instead because of my whole kind of journey through the world of sharks. And I also thought, oh, well, if I do marine biology, it's probably going to be less writing than drama.
Maybe.
Maybe not. So yeah, that was a bit of a shocker. But I was going to go, right, I'm going to get my bachelor's, I'm going to get my master's, I'm going to get my doctorate. I'm going to be the dude that's writing those papers, that's making change in, government and all that kind of stuff, that's going to be what I'm going to do. And then in 2005, I went on an expedition to the Adriatic, and the Adriatic part of the Mediterranean, and it was a shark expedition. Now, back in the day, the Adriatic was a hotbed for sharks, for all different species, and was likely a popping ground for great whites. In fact, one of the largest great whites ever caught was caught in the Adriatic. So, we're going to go there, we're going to chum like hell, and see what we get. Anyway, in 2 weeks, we set up the boat and we shipped on and off. So the boat was static, and we had crews. You do 12 hours on, 12 hours off. But throughout that whole time, we never stopped chumming. So it was always chum in the water. And in 2 weeks, we got one shark.
Wow.
And it just smashed me. And I came back from that and I thought, you know what? I am not the brightest. I'm not the smartest. I'm not going to be, some sort of world leader in writing these reports. And even if I do, who's going to read them? Whenever I want to read a peer-reviewed paper, it's always behind a paywall. So so I'm going to write a report that 10 people are going to read, and 9 of them will already know about it anyway.
And they're just looking for a citation to put in their own report.
Exactly. Or I could use my enormously large mouth to yell at people in the street and get them excited and get them interested. And then that was the sort of thing I did, and, rolled the dice on being a broadcaster, a wildlife broadcaster, and gone down that way. But yeah, things have, sort of diversified a little bit from then. But I suppose coming back to the whole thing about science communication, it is just magic to see how far that has gone in, lots. I mean, this is a science communication podcast. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And there are so many.
And that's kind of part of why we started Conservation Connection, is because so many of these papers and this research being done is behind a paywall, like you said. And it's being communicated to the same scientists who probably already know about it or are referencing it in their work, like Chance said. And this gives an opportunity for listeners all around the world to be like, oh, that's cool. I want to know a little bit more about sharks or gopher tortoises or green energy or whatever the topic is. Let me tune in and find out a little bit more.
But then you get as well, I think one thing that science communication misses. So I qualified out of Bangor University in North Wales, and I do regular talks for them once a year to their leavers who are all interested in science communication, which again in itself is amazing, because at one point, there
would be no infrastructure for that at all.
But one thing I do say to them is, and I really try and impart on them, is look, you can go and do, a master's in this. You can get a diploma in science communication. You can do blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it does require a natural ability. And I said, follow that natural ability. And I'm just, this is what I love about all the different offshoots of it. I said, you could be a terrible presenter, but you could be great on a podcast. Or you could be great on a podcast, but you can't write. Or you could write, but you can't do that. And it's don't all go down one route. Just find the thing that you're best at in the terms of science communication. Because the one thing science communication doesn't, it covers because we're doing it, but you don't see it initially, I think it'd be better named as science translation. Ooh. Because you look at that report, you read that peer-reviewed report, and you've got the statistics in it, and you've got this and that and the other. We know what that means because we've done the hard yards to do those reports in the first place. But Matey Boy might not know. So you need to actually translate. You need to say, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that there's this confidence interval. And right, that means, and you say to this person is, yeah, they proved without doubt that, or they proved to a scientist. And I think that the science communication is primarily science translation.
And a lot of the times I tell people that it's 2 different languages. So translation totally works. And that's because scientists develop all of this jargon, all of these terms, because they have to communicate really complex concepts to other scientists succinctly, right? There's, what did you call the blood-sucking animals that we were talking about before the interview?
The sandflies. I mean, are they parasitic or are they just, predatory bloodletters? Yeah, what's it? Not hemolyths.
Hemophage?
Yes, it will be. Yeah, thank you, because they're blood eaters, aren't they?
Right, yeah.
I want to point out I'm not an anthropologist at this point. For any anthropologists listening, I'm not an anthropologist. But yeah, that's...
With the term, right? Hemophage, right?
Vampires.
That's vampires, right? That's the translation.
Boom.
that really specific language works really well with other scientists, but it gets lost when you don't speak that language. So you have to translate from the language of science to the language of the everyday person in order for it to matter and make an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also recently saw someone say, you know, when you're communicating science to people who don't know what you're talking about necessarily, you think of it like a pyramid. When you're communicating to other scientists, you start with your like big, all of your science, your heavy terms at the top. And then at the end, like you have this tiny little abstract that's like, this is essentially what we found.
Yeah. Right? Background, methods, conclusion. And the background is like half the paper. And then the conclusion, the part that really matters, is like the last little couple of paragraphs.
Did it work? No.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you communicate it to just your average person who knows nothing about what you're doing, you have to flip that on its head.
It's got to start with like, hey, here's the impact. And then if you're still with me after that, if that's all you get, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're still with me, we'll talk about some of the broader implications and stuff like that.
Good to know when to stop as well. That's the other thing. There's no point smashing, tertiary level science into an 8-year-old's face.
Right.
For starters, you get arrested for that. I mean, textbooks are heavy. One swipe at an 8-year-old, they're down crying for mummy. It's like, come on, pick yourself up.
And you've got years to deal with those ramifications. You'll be sitting and thinking about it in a jail cell for a long time.
You change your name, lose your passport, things can happen. But yeah, you've got to, you pick your battles, and you have to, pick your audience as well and know what you're saying to the right people. Like if I'm talking to like leads, they're leads. I refer to everything along the lines of sports cars or, action, explosion, that kind of stuff, because that's what they're tuned into. If I'm talking to kids, I'll emphasize the snot, the poo, the wee, because that's what they're into. That's what makes them giggle. So you got to pick your targets as well.
Yep. We do that. So our roles as a married couple and hosts of the show is that I'm always the one that like wants to dive into the nuts and bolts and like I want to read the full paper. And Sarah Catherine is like, Chance, you have to dial that back. I need you to just like stop nerding out quite so much because we have to make it connect.
Yeah. I'm like, just give me the overview.
This abstract.
I don't have the attention span.
Yeah.
Abstracts are written for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to know how you got the name Blowfish.
Oh, I wish this was a better story. It's such a weak story. I'm going to have to invent a new one.
You will.
So it was when I was at university, and it was my first year, and you know what it's like, you're joining all the clubs and all that kind of stuff. So I joined up with the surf club, and I remember vividly having a conversation with the guy in charge of the surf club through the window of his kitchen. I'm outside, he's in his kitchen, and I'm talking through the window to him. I was like, yeah, I want to join. He was like, yeah, cool, no worries. We're getting hoodies made for the start of the year, and we're going to get names on them. Everyone has an aquatic name. It's just part of the gig. He said, what do you want? And I was like, I had no idea. But at the time, I was keeping pufferfish at home, and I was like, go for pufferfish. And he was like, yeah, sure, fine, no worries. And then I handed him my passport photo for the ID stamp. And he looked at it, and in it, I'm like, I just made a stupid face for the listeners. You can't hear it, but it was a dumbass face. So I'm like, and he just went, you don't look like a pufferfish, you look like a blowfish. And it just stuck.
Yeah.
And certainly as well, when it came to being a wildlife presenter, being a presenter, trying to have that little step out, Tom Hurd's a fine name, it's all well and good, but, the blowfish, it's got a little, people remember that. And certainly as well, when I started off, I wasn't putting stuff on YouTube until well down the line. When I started off, I was filming, a friend of mine was filming me. He was editing it and putting it onto DVDs, and I was posting DVDs to production companies, because it was that early on. That's how old and ragged I am. So again, having something to stand out, and the historical way into sort of broadcasting in the UK at that point was you start off in kids' TV and you kind of work up. The Blowfish, the world's only heavy metal marine biologist, just to work for all that. But it is true. It's a Highlander thing, basically. If you know of another heavy metal marine biologist, I need names, dates, and places. We have to have a fight. Aquariums are holy ground. Can't fight in aquariums.
Right, you'll hurt the fish.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. But yeah, I wish it was something better, but it was simply that I had a big fat face with spiky hair before all this fell out. I had really spiky hair. And he said, you don't look like a pufferfish, you look like a blowfish. I'm like, oh, blowfish, yeah, that's quite good, yeah.
I'll take
Yeah,
it.
I was sure you were going to be, when I was like, how did he get this name? And I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe, he was like surfing and like fell on a blowfish or like something crazy. You stumbled into one or something. But
Nope.
your story's good.
Having an incredibly British conversation with a bloke through a window in his kitchen while he's drinking a cup of tea.
Which is almost like subversively on brand for you, I think.
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah. That is very me, so...
That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So I want to dive a little bit into some of the science and projects and experiences you've had over your time as a marine biologist. So, we know kind of the personality right now of the Blowfish as the presenter, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your experiences and the research that you've been able to be a part of.
Well, I mean, absolutely full disclosure, I've only got a bachelor in science. As far as the scientific tree is concerned, I am absolutely bottom of the pile. There are woodlouse that are more educated than I am. But throughout my career, throughout just my life, I've just always tried to be involved with stuff, read stuff, listen to stuff. I'm lucky enough that other than forgetting my passport, I'm actually quite good at remembering other things. So I've developed a very broad, wide knowledge of a lot of stuff. And I remember, I think it's a way that just the way that my mind works in terms of remembering things. And certainly anyone that's seen Ocean Wonders will know that I'm always making analogies, because that's a really great way to remember stuff. And it's also great way to connect, and it's a great way for me to remember stuff. So you won't see my name on any papers. I'm not that talented. I can name you lots of incredible scientists who are, but I am not one of them. I have just been grinding away in the background, doing odds and sods. In the UK, I've been connected with the Marine Conservation Society for a long time, the Shark Trust in the UK as well. I've worked in various different aquaria, private and public. But yeah, I am not and I don't even pretend to be, I'm not a scientific trailblazer. I try and shout loud for the people that have done the hard work, say, look at this is amazing, cop hold of that. So I wish I'd done an interesting piece of research. The only thing that I am potentially research famous for is believe I'm currently the only person alive ever to play live heavy metal to sharks, both in South Africa and in the UK.
Nice.
I don't think anyone else has done that.
And that's an interesting piece, because this little factoid has been rattling around the back of my head, and that kind of brought it to the front. I've always heard that heavy metal music played underwater will bring sharks in. It's an interesting sound to them, and they come and investigate that.
Yeah.
You've always heard that?
I mean, I've heard it for, I don't know, it's been bouncing on for a couple of years.
I've never heard that.
Really?
I believe that other people have heard that, but I've never heard it.
Yeah, I mean...
Continue.
That's what happens when you dive into the minutiae.
Right? We get it.
Yeah, you and Chance have a lot of similarities I've discovered throughout this conversation. But anyway, continue.
This has been very fun for me. So question one, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, it is true. And did you successfully
Prove it, yes.
Call in the sharks?
Yeah. So studies with sound and sharks have been done for a long time. And, in the hierarchy of response for sharks, the first one down the line, so you go sound and then scent. Equally, they can shift, but we're getting into, again, the nitty-gritty of that.
Wait, can I see if I can finish this? Because I think I know this one.
Go for it.
Okay, so sound, then scent.
Yeah.
And then vision.
Yeah, probably.
And then electromagnetic reception.
Yeah.
And then taste.
Yeah. Give or take. That's yeah. Like I said, they can shift around, but you would think that the two things that will pull a shark in from a long distance are a scent trail or a sound. So obviously there's this age-old thing of, a shark can detect one droplet of blood a mile away. That is true but wrong. They can detect one droplet of blood diluted over a mile of water, but it's not like you drop it in here and then 1 mile away the shark immediately goes, it has to smell it. It has to smell it, otherwise it doesn't know it's there. So scent propagates very, very well in the water, and of course we use scent when we're chumming and stuff, but sound can propagate a lot faster. And if it's the right sound, it'll bring the sharks in, but that's the key thing. It's got to be the right sound. So there's been a lot of studies done where scientists have shown different sounds will affect different sharks of different species in different ways. It really is a very sort of wide spectrum. So if you've got like a medium-sized shark and you play the right kind of sound for it, it will think, oh, great, that's prey, I'll come in. That same sound will actually cause a shark of the same species, but smaller, to flee the area.
Because it knows that a bigger shark is coming?
Potentially a bigger shark is coming, or they might think that's the sound of a bigger shark. But, they have the ability to, figure out, is that sound actually scary to me? Is it, something I should avoid? Or is it something I should investigate? And the thing about heavy metal is that the classic kind of... One, Metallica. Other heavy metal bands are available. That brr, brr that we get is very, very similar to the death throes of a fish.
For people like me who need concrete examples, here's a short clip from a heavy metal song called Liberate, which is performed by the artist Thor, 2 R's. Listen closely to the fast-paced, almost frantic beat in this section. It's not a huge leap to imagine that a large fish like a tuna could make similar thrashing noises in its final moments, ringing a dinner bell for any sharks close enough to hear the sounds.
So when a fish is caught, dying, whatnot, it will rudder its tail, and that will then bring in the sharks. And of course, sound propagates very, very quickly through water, but then you start getting into some very interesting physics of just quite how sound does it. That's why I say that there's a difference between, in water, you feel sound first and you hear it after because of the way that sound moves through water.
I was going to ask how sharks are sensing, perceiving those sounds, because I know that they have lateral lines, right? Mm-hmm. That sense pressure waves through the water. Do they also have ears?
Yep.
Okay, so there is both of those systems in play.
Yeah, and they will be tuned to pick up different things. So the lateral line system is there to pick up those pressure waves. And I always describe it as, if you visit London and you go on the underground, you could be standing on the platform and the tube train isn't there yet, but as it's coming down the tunnel, you feel it. But you can't see it, but you can feel it. And that's how the lateral line works. You've got that pressure is moving on the outside of the shark. It comes down into the shark through the tubes, and then it affects the sensitive cells in there. And you go, there's something moving, even though I can't see it. And so those bigger pressure waves, those bigger oscillations of water molecules will affect that. But the smaller pressure waves, that for the shark's hearing, relies on the shark to be vibrating at a different frequency to the parts in its ear, so it can tell the difference in a different way. So it's the close sort of high energy sounds that sharks will pick up with their ears and will hear, but it's the further sort of medium, further distance, low frequency, like persistent sounds that sharks will physically feel.
Which, 2 thoughts on that. One is that really connects the dots for me of, I've heard that people in the deaf community actually love to attend heavy metal shows because they can feel so much of the vibration, in their chest. It's just such a loud, energetic music that they still get a lot of that somatic vibration that just happens in their body. And that's really a very interesting experience. But it also connects for me of how elephants communicate over long distances by making grumbles that are lower, very, very low in pitch, very, very deep sounds, but they travel massive distances across open air and savanna so that they can communicate with other members of their herd a very long distance away.
Yeah. And obviously once we start getting into the air is a fluid. It's a less dense fluid than water, but it's still a fluid. So the fluid dynamics apply in both air and water, but obviously in water they work a lot better. So you can send, a whale, for example, has the ability to, if the ocean was quiet, which is another story for another time, a large whale would have the ability to send a sound potentially 3/4 of the way around the globe, which is I was going to swear, which is insane. You know, you're talking about sending a sound thousands of miles.
That's not amplified.
No.
It's just your body creating a vibration that can travel 3/4 away around the world.
It's again, it comes down to the way that you make the water molecules move, and it's those low frequencies that make them move to an extent that it's a wave of, you know, and the wave just keeps going. Whereas opposed to sort of a random like juddering, and then the juddering doesn't work out right. Like if you've ever had those clicky doodahs that you get on the desk, you know, you set one going and it'll go for ages. You pick 3 up at once and try it, and it goes blah, 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 and then stops.
All that energy just dissipates.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where did you say you've played heavy metal for sharks again?
So I did it in South Africa.
Okay.
And I did it in the UK as well. So in South Africa, we were playing it to, well, whatever was there. We were hoping to get some great whites. We didn't, but we got some bronze whalers, which is a very nice shark. And we got a positive response to the speaker. So the shark came in, with speaker in the water. The shark came in and nosed it, and, you know, was properly investigating the speaker. You know, it'd gone past that point where I studied behavior when I was at uni, when I was in my marine biology. It really interests me. And whenever you study behavior, it's always qualitative, not quantitative. You can't say yes or no for sure, because you're never 100% sure why they're doing it. We can say it is most likely, probably, maybe, potentially.
We
who
think
knows?
this.
We think maybe. Who knows? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Barry reckons, but I'm not so sure. So you look for the definites in it, and, you know, there wasn't any bait on the speaker, so it wasn't trying to eat any bait. It wasn't trying to bite the speaker, so it didn't think that the thing was alive. You look at the body language of the shark, the way that its eyes are looking, the way, you know, it was nosing the speaker because it's like, this is making sound. What is this? So it's banging it to try and get more information from it. And the same thing happened when we were off Cornwall, and we got a blue shark come in. Same thing, up to the speaker, touching it, nosing it, trying to figure out what that sound is. And, you know, if it could continue to be studied, it has an application in terms of, we can use sound to deter sharks. We can use sound to attract sharks. So if you had an ability to basically put on a CD and like track 1 is bring the sharks in and track 2 is send them away, then for scientists, we need the sharks to come in. There we go. Play that. In they come. Tag them. Winner, chicken dinner. You're next to a beach. People want to swim. Oh, track 2. Send them away.
Yeah.
Track 3, disco track. Get them dancing.
Yeah.
Fancy sharks.
Yeah. But what as a random aside in that, what I love about sharks, and I hope that one day it is somehow proved wrong, it'd be great if it was, is that there's so much sound in the oceans. I mean, fish are permanently communicating with each other, which people don't know about. You know, invertebrates communicate with each other through sound as well. And obviously the famous ones, the cetaceans, dolphins, and whales, we know that they like, shut up. But we all know they're making sound. Sharks are silent. They have currently no noise-making organs in their body. And I just think that for an animal that's been around since before flowers evolved, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's a misperception that people think fish are silent as a whole, and that is 100% not true. I mean, I've been in the water when I was working at an aquarium next to a Goliath grouper that I didn't realize was next to me, and I heard that.
Yeah.
And it's like in my chest. I'm terrified because, you know, I have that small mammal response of like, I'm in the water, there's a big predator, I need to move. And
Goliath groupers get big as well. You don't mess with a Goliath grouper.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason they're called Goliath. It was a big freaking fish. It was as big as me. But I had never heard that sharks are silent.
They have no noise-making organs. So, you know, in your fish, you've got, they can do this stratiation, which is where they're physically rubbing two things together, like a cricket would, where it rubs its back legs. So quite often they will rub the joint of the pectoral fin. So, you know, like your shoulder joint, if you will, you know, they will be able to rub that and that'll make a noise. You know, you get fish that will grind their teeth. You get fish that will affect their swim bladder, and of course, you know, there's a gas-filled drum inside them. There's a whole range of fish called drums because they make this noise, and they even have a modified muscle in there that allows them to beat their own swim bladder to communicate. And then you get things like herrings as well, which, you know, they fart to communicate, which pleases me no end. And to show that scientists have a sense of humor, they're called fast repetitive ticks, FRTs, farts.
Nice.
And this is where the herring release gas from their bodies to communicate, and they pick it up and they fart to communicate. So the oceans are this, this massive just concert of sound. I would say more things in the ocean make sound than don't. Not potentially going too far into the invertebrates, but I love the fact that through all of that, sharks,
they're listeners.
They've got the mute button on. They make no noise,
Yeah.
which is very cool.
That is very cool.
Have you considered doing this and playing music back in the Adriatic? Is that where you said you were previously, where you didn't see as many sharks as you expected?
We could do it, but the reason why there are no sharks there is because they've all been fished out.
Yeah.
So it would take a long time, I think, for the shark populations in the Adriatic to recover. Certainly with the European fishing quotas as they are, the Adriatic and the Mediterranean, it has been decimated in terms of fishing. So, the just across the board there is devoid of life. And as you guys well know, and I'm sure many of the listeners will know as well, if you don't have those, those building blocks along the bottom, you can't build a tall tower. And right at the top of the tall tower, sharks.
I mean, that's just like what we were talking about. Actually, our first episode of last season was all about how rattlesnakes are umbrellas. They're a species where if you manage for rattlesnakes, that actually means you're managing for the things that the rattlesnakes eat. It means you're managing for the habitats that those little rodents need to survive. So if you manage for the top predators, you're actually managing for the health of the ecosystem.
Yeah. And there's been studies done as well with sharks where they've shown, because I'm a big believer when coming back to science communication, especially here at EarthX as well, there's a wide variety of people here. There are people who are, the full card carrying, flat earthers with their, climate change doesn't exist and stuff, and they're here to do their story. And then you've got people on the other side who are willing to, sellotape themselves to a tree to protect it. So, you've got that wide range, but it's that middle ground is where you're going to find the compromise. And it's the compromise is the way forward. And with fishing industry, certainly, if you say, well, look, how about we make you more money? They're like, yeah, what do you want us to do? More money? Yeah, for sure. And there's been studies shown that actually if you have a healthy shark population, it shows a net profit increase in fisheries. So you say, right, do this. You don't even need to tell them why. You can just say, you're going to make more money. And like, yeah, great. And then you're saving the sharks. So I think that is very, very important when, as all science communicators, if you walk up to everyone inside them is a petulant child and teenager throughout their whole life. If you walk up to someone and say, don't do that, they're going to say, I'm doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Watch me.
Yeah, exactly. Watch me. There's obviously I understand that, the sheer kind of rage and terror and fear that many people around the world have right now in terms of their, place in the sort of the ecosystem and conservation, that kind of jazz, to, go out there and really yell and make a really big noise. But it's those quiet chats in the middle that really work. Those ones where you say, oh, like you said, with the rattlesnakes, oh, if you do this, you'll actually get more. We go, what, really? I'll make more money. All I've got to do is look at, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, easy.
It's how you frame the question as opposed to saying, you shouldn't do that. People are like, oh, watch me. I'm going to do it now anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's, we always kind of push this narrative of we all agree on a lot of things. We just disagree on how to make them happen. Mm-hmm. And if we can find that common ground, that's how things actually occur. That's how progress occurs, is when you can find ways to work with the other side, quote unquote.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of which, kind of following along with your story and what Chance just said, there's obviously plenty of hard and bad things happening in the world, things that we hear about often. You kind of always hear that negative narrative of everything's terrible, there's nothing we can do. But I would love to hear you talk about, and the work that you do with the communities you work with and the show you're on. It seems like you have a lot of opportunities to work with different communities and see different people reacting to these changes, and I assume helping them and making a difference. So I'd love to hear some of your experience with that. Well,
if you're on sort of the front lines, you really are just talking to and dealing with, people who are living there every day. They're doing their 9 to 5, they need to take their kids to school, they need to go shopping, they need to go to work, all that kind of stuff. And coming back to what we were just saying, if you suddenly turn around to, a mum of 2 and say, right, you can't drive your car to school to drop your kids off anymore. It's like, well, but what am I supposed to do otherwise? You know, I truly believe that the average Joe wants to make a change. But it doesn't help when they see people at the top who have got all the option making no change. And it doesn't help when the policymakers continue to not make a change. So what I drive for the most is just like, it's the smallest stones that start an avalanche. So when you're speaking to the everyday, guy or gal or kid, you give them a task they can do. You know, no one, if you said, right, okay, tomorrow morning we're running a marathon, none of us are going to complete it. It's not going to happen. But if you say tomorrow morning we'll do 500 meters or 500 yards, yeah, we can do that. And then the day after we'll do 6, and the day after we'll do, that's how you do conservation, and that's how I talk to these guys. So I'll say, look, if you can eat less meat, take the bus a bit more, turn the lights off at home. These are all things people can do, and it's all things that they can do now.
And things that don't change the bottom line of their lives. They still get to live their lives as they want to live them. They just make these small changes.
Exactly. I drive to work. I drive long distances as I'm doing all my surveys and stuff. I try not to drive when I don't need to, but I still need to do it. But I try and do things other ways. Now, there might be someone who's like, actually, I don't need to drive at all. But, I need to keep the heating on at home more. And the thing is, if we all did as well as we could within our spheres, rather than trying to do, everything and it doesn't work. If we all do all those little things that we can do, say, actually, yeah, we can go fully vegetarian, or we can have a heat pump put on our house, or we can afford solar panels. That's just as good as the mum of 4 saying, you know what, guys, tonight it's just going to be like a veggie tea. And we have to celebrate all those small wins, all those small gains, because as I just said, it's the smallest stones that start an avalanche. You pile all them up, it's a huge change. And it's those kind of changes that affect the bottom lines of, and again, this is what I say to people, if you go to the supermarket and there is 1 meter's worth or 3 yards worth, no, 3 feet worth, sorry, I keep trying to do the translations. If you got 3 foot worth on the supermarket of, since we're here, meat-free alternatives, all right? If they keep selling out, the supermarket they don't care what's there. Supermarket does not care what is there. They'll go, that aisle keeps need restocking. Let's have more. And then there's suddenly 3 foot becomes 6 foot. And if that keeps selling out, they go, that's making us even more money. 6 foot becomes 9 foot. And at no point does anyone say to the supermarket, yeah, that's really good for the environment. They just go, money equals good.
Yeah, it's all about that bottom line.
Yeah.
We hear it often now, I feel like, is like consumers can make a difference. The company that you shop with or the places you support, and if they're sustainable places, make a difference, because like you said, supermarkets, that kind of stuff, they don't care what it is that's selling. They see that it's selling and they're making money, so this is good and we want more.
Which is super funny because in my mind that ties to this sort of ecological concept of optimal foraging. Which says,
good shout.
Which says that an organism will always do the least amount of work for the most amount of calories gained, right? So if you only have so much energy, you're going to chase down the prey item that has the most fat on it because you'll get more calories when you catch it than the one that doesn't have as much fat. Companies are doing the same thing. They always want to make the most amount of money by spending the least amount of money. So they don't really care how that happens, but if what you're doing makes them more money, that's the solution. Let's do more of that.
And it's the money in the everyday pocket that is affecting that. The money at the top, it's not real money. The money at the top are just numbers that translate between different people's bank accounts at different times. But it's the actual green in your hand that can affect the green in the world.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, you have come to us today off of filming for Shark Week over in New Zealand, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see from you on Shark Week. And I know you have a new season of Ocean Wonders coming out on EarthX TV. So what are we going to be seeing?
A very large, hairy man making a lot of noise and looking much like Shrek's uglier cousin. So that will be the sort of the general gist. But
I don't know about that. That's selling yourself a little short.
The Shrek bit, or it's definitely hairy.
I mean, you're not green, so
that is true. Okay, so there we are. We're in the win already. So yeah, Shark Week. we were looking for some really, really big great whites, because there is just not a lot of study going on in New Zealand about where these great whites are coming from, where they're going. There's a huge amount of question marks. We've seen this mass exodus of great whites from the classical parts of South Africa. Where are they going? Where have they gone? That study isn't happening yet. So in New Zealand, you've got Australia, you've got Polynesia, you've got some of these more southern Pacific islands. It's a great kind of launching spot for lots of different things. Whether or not it's a stopover, like a service station on the way to something else, or whether or not they're getting there to fatten up, or we don't know. So we were just looking for some nice big fat sharks, and that was the whole point in the show, the fattest shark. How big can a shark get? So keep an eye out for that. I don't 100% know what channel it will show on in the US, but it will surely be Discovery related. And then, Ocean Wonders. Now that's a proper show. That's a proper show right there. That's on EarthX TV, as you've said. We've already done series 1 of Ocean Wonders that's been out and had a good run. And we went back to the well. We went again. And it is just me talking about the animals that I love, the fishy ones, the wet ones, and explaining some really cool concepts while looking like a bit of a fool, which is
great TV
and on brand. So watch Ocean Wonders. Ocean Wonders is brilliant. Even if you only watch 10 minutes of it, you'd hopefully learn something. You'd hopefully get a giggle from it. And if not, just you can admire my beard because it's on show. So
it's beautiful.
Speaking of which, does your mask not fill with water? Do you do Vaseline?
No, if I'm wearing the full face mask.
Yeah.
It's usually because my head is so enormously massive. So I'm usually having to have the mask on its lowest settings anyway. And then to stop it just riding up off the top of my enormous melon, I usually tighten the chin straps up quite a bit. So I never actually get any leakage.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just sheer will and volume.
Yeah, but the beard is still sticking out. If you see it, the beard is still there flapping around underneath the mask. It's not tucked into the mask.
Oh, I've seen. So, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
It's like, how does he do it?
Yeah. So it's all about the beard, really. The show is just a format for the beard.
I love it.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so I want to leave on one final question. What is your favorite fish?
Ooh.
Fish, like bony fish.
It could be cartilaginous, it could be bony. I'm just going to leave it open-ended. I feel like if it's a shark, that's kind of a cop-out because you are the shark guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a blowfish.
How about give me a favorite bony fish and a favorite cartilaginous fish?
Okay, my favorite bony fish is the tom pot blenny, which is a native to the UK. They are just fantastic.
What do they look like?
So about sort of 4 to 6 inches long. Quite deep-bodied. They are sublittoral, so it means that they're just off the tide line in those shallow waters, and they are brilliant. They are full of character. They're territorial. They recognize like snorkelers and divers. They'll keep coming back to saying them. But the best thing about them is they've got these wonderful tentacles over their eyes, and they just check them out. The tom pot blenny, that's my favorite bony fish. My favorite shark, this is really, really tricky, but I would probably say the tasseled wobbegong.
Ooh, good choice.
Yeah. Love them.
There's a lot going on with that. And of course, they've got a great beard. So
I was going to say both of these have like big, beardy, hairy like additions to them. So
game respects game. What can I say?
It recognizes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, thank you so much, Fish, for being on the show with us. We have had this has been such a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. And I hope that I answered some questions and didn't just ramble on like a moron.
It was great.
So it was the rambling like a moron then?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Cut and wrap.
Boom.
Well, we pretty clearly had just an amazing time recording that interview, lots of laughs, so we hope you got to laugh along with us as well.
I mean, Fish is he describes himself as a heavy metal marine biologist, which sounds like what every 6-year-old would describe their ideal job as, right? Like, I want to be a scientist that's also in a heavy metal rock band, and I'm going to study sharks.
Right.
What a fascinating character of a human.
Yeah, he was just amazing.
So, Sarah Catherine, what did you learn this week?
Well, it's probably pretty obvious that my answer is what I already said during the show, which was I had no clue that heavy metal was known to attract sharks, which apparently everyone else in the room knew.
Well, to be fair, there were only 3 people in the room. 2 of us have studied sharks before.
Yeah.
You know what I really enjoyed about that is that I never really understood the mechanism behind it. And the idea that they believe that it's mimicking the basically death throes of a fish that shark might be interested in eating. You know, imagine a tuna that's dying and kind of shaking. It's doing that dun sound that is really prevalent in heavy metal.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy and just absolutely new to me.
And in prepping for this episode all week, I have been listening to Metallica. Thank you very much, Fish.
Well, I was also kind of worried because when we lived in the Keys, you know, they would have like discos underwater or whatever. So you'd put on like your scuba gear and you'd go underwater and like listen to music. And I was like, wait, what is this about like music bringing in sharks? Because this seems like a bad idea. But now I understand different type of music.
I think we went to different parties when we lived in the Keys.
Unfortunately, I never got to go to one of those, but I did see it advertised. What did you learn this week?
I learned that herrings fart to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that somebody who's been doing this for as long as I have would have run across that, because that is one of the funniest science snippets I've ever heard in my life. But nope, brand new information to me. And I did a little bit of digging on it. The best article I could find was by Wilson, Beatty, and Dill. The Royal Society published it in 2004. And it sounded like at the time, they still didn't really understand where the gas was coming from. Is it actually digestive gas? But the fact that they named it a fast repetitive tick, or a FERT, is just the funniest thing in the world to me.
Yeah, that was definitely a ridiculous fact to learn. Scientists do have humor.
A ridiculous fact from a ridiculous man.
Very true.
So that's kind of a wrap on season 10.
Yeah, this has been a really fun season, and we've seen so much growth throughout the season, and we really appreciate you listening, all of our listeners that have supported us through this season, and we hope that you've enjoyed the season as well.
So we're going on break for the next couple of weeks. We'll be back on October 1st. Hopefully, wherever you are, fall is starting to set in. I just started to see the first changing leaves here in Columbus, Georgia. It's still in the 90s, but at least it's on its way to fall for us.
We're basic and getting very excited for pumpkin spice season.
Yeah, I've been making pumpkin spice coffee at home for at least 2 weeks now. One of my guilty pleasures. Over the break, you guys can keep up with us on Instagram. If you're interested in learning how many seagulls Tom the Blowfish herd could take in a fight, well, you can find that answer exclusively on Conservation Connection's Instagram account, which is just @ConservationConnection.
Throughout the break, you can expect to see some more posts on Instagram. On our stories, we'll be posting about some of our older episodes. So if you haven't been with us since 2019, you can kind of cherry pick your way through and say, oh, this is interesting.
I mean, we have over 130 episodes posted as of today. So there's a lot of good conservation information you guys can learn about by digging through our backlog.
Yeah, so I'll be posting some of our past episodes on there. I'll also be posting some reels from our time in Sun Valley, some other reels from EarthX, and probably some other content. So
you mentioned Sun Valley, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing for season 11.
We're super excited to have had the opportunity to work with Sun Valley since 2022. We always get amazing content, and it's always such a reinvigorating time for us to go out there and connect with people who really care about the environment and conservation. So this upcoming season, you can expect lots of interesting perspectives.
I mean, some of the really cool stories that we got to capture was like a woman who is an ocean scientist. She's been studying coral reefs for most of her life. She was underwater studying reefs when a volcano went off, and she describes for us what that experience is like of being underwater for a volcanic explosion.
We also interview some reoccurring guests who tend to show up on the show, one of them being the Nature Conservancy. We talk to them about their Nature Bonds program and learn a little bit more about that. We also interview an artist who does amazing work with recycled materials as well as other materials.
And he started the global Turn Off the Tap movement, talking about how it doesn't matter if we recycle plastic if we're still producing it. So just a really cool set of conversations we got to have in Sun Valley. The first time we were going out there, I was like, why are we going to Idaho? Don't they only have potatoes here? And I was very wrong. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It started a love of fly fishing for me. Just a really cool experience for us.
So we hope you've enjoyed this season, and we can't wait to see you next season on October 1st.